Good morning, APUSH. This is Mr. Southall coming to you from Lane Memorial Hospital. I'm sorry I can't be there Monday and Tuesday, and probably not Wednesday or Thursday either. We'll see how things go, but I'll be out because of I had to get my gallbladder removed because my body decided to try to kill me by making gallbladder stones, and so now I have to get all that removed Monday, so I'll be out with surgery. But I don't want to neglect you, and this is me trying to be dedicated to make sure you have the best opportunity to score well in the AP test and the EOC coming up in just a few short weeks. So we're going to basically do some notes on this video. We're going to cover where we left off last week with Unit 12. So I'm picking up today with the Cuban Missile Crisis. However, I just want to make an announcement as far as what else is going on this week. Tuesday, you're going to have the work keys test. So all the juniors, and they changed the schedule now to where it's all just one day in the morning. So first through fourth hour is going to have work keys test, which means you wouldn't be in class anyway. But we're not going to lose that time. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make videos for YouTube. This is the first video right here. You'll watch as much as you can Monday with Miss Lanier, and get as many notes as possible. Whatever you don't finish, go finish the videos online. So basically, you're going to have 2 days worth of notes to take from the videos. If you don't finish them all in class, they'll be posted to YouTube. Finish those for homework. I more likely should not be back Wednesday, but I will make new videos for notes. But you should be able to do that in class, and I'll give those over to the sub that day as well. My goal is hopefully to be back, if everything goes well, by Thursday or Friday, and we can kind of resume things as normal. But just make sure you understand that, Monday through Wednesday it's still going to be notes. Even if you're out Tuesday work keys, go home and look at the notes on the YouTube video. Thursday is your first review packet quiz. That's still going to happen whether I'm there or not. And then Friday is going to be the first Unit 13 quiz covering Reagan, Bush, and Clinton, and that's going to happen whether I'm there or not. So just make sure you're still treating this week like it's normal, because I want to make sure your week's normal. That way you can get ready for EOC and not have any kind of hiatus or break. Okay? So I unfortunately can't project a laptop. All PowerPoints from the whole year, though, are on Moodle. So if you pull it up as you're listening to this video, that's quite fine. But we're resuming Unit 12 with the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I'm going to again try to go through these as quickly as I can. That way, you're not taking up too much time. So I'm not taking up too much of your time. All right. So, like we said in the video, the closest we ever come to nuclear war and the biggest challenge for us and the Soviets had to be the Cuban Missile Crisis, which takes place in October of '62. Our U-2 planes found out about the Soviets putting in missiles into Cuba. So it took about a week for JFK to decide what he needed to do to stop this from happening. So he and his brother, actually Robert Kennedy, suggested doing a blockade. So in the second week of this crisis, there's going to be a blockade surrounding Cuba, trying to protect the island and so forth, and basically doing a standoff, saying that if Soviets cross this line, it's going to be a problem. So we put a blockade around, putting the responsibility now on the Soviets. So the Soviets start to come towards us, and as they get really close to us, they turn at the last minute, and so we essentially won the game of chicken there with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Immediately after that, you're going to see some immediate results from the Cuban Missile Crisis. But we were that close. A lot of people were panicking, were worried, following the TV and so forth. That was the closest we ever came to a nuclear war with the Soviets throughout the entire Cold War. So the immediate results of this: number one, Khrushchev pledges to remove the nuclear warheads if we vow to not go into Cuba anymore. We still had this idea that we're going to go into Cuba, we're going to invade, take out Castro, and put a government back in that we liked. So we vow not to do that. So under Kennedy, we vow not to go into Cuba, and the Soviets also removed their nuclear warheads. On what was not made public, though, which was also part of the deal, was that we also agreed to remove the nuclear warheads out of Turkey. We had put nuclear warheads back in the late 50s in Turkey. So in all honesty, we had nuclear warheads on their doorstep already. So when they put nuclear warheads on Cuba, that was kind of their tit for tat. So now we remove our nuclear warheads from Turkey, they remove theirs from Cuba, and we also agree not to attack Cuba anymore either. We also install what's called a hotline. That's in the next result, is that the White House and the Kremlin, which is their government facility, the White House and the Kremlin will immediately install a hotline or a phone line. So basically, if there's ever a major crisis like this again, we don't have this big lack of communication and standoff. What happens is that we can pick up we or they can pick up the phone, we can talk about it, excuse me, and our leaders can work out the situation and problem and so on. A third result, and this is not as direct, but it comes almost a year later, in the summer of 1963, after this Cuban Missile Crisis and us trying to work a little bit better with the Soviets, Kennedy declares what's called the Limited Test Ban Treaty, and the Soviets will agree to this as well. So Khrushchev, who's the leader still, agrees to this as well too. The Limited Test Ban Treaty will vow for us to never test nuclear weapons in the atmosphere anymore. So as of 1963, us and the Soviets both agreed to this Limited Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and we all vow not to any longer test nuclear warheads in the atmosphere. Either they'll be done underwater or they'll be done underground from this point forward. Okay, so at the time, Kennedy gets criticized for how he handled this. Some people were kind of on the fence about what happened. Some people think that he was too strong, or he was not strong enough. Some of his critics said he was practicing brinkmanship, which he had campaigned against back during the 1960 election. But in hindsight, most people feel like he did the best he could, because what other option really was there unless you want to go nuclear war, which is not the best solution. Khrushchev also has a lot of critics come down hard on him, except he does lose his job over this. So after the Cuban Missile Crisis and some other things that happened to him, he does lose his job, and so he's replaced by a guy named Leonid Brezhnev, who you don't really need to be aware of, but Brezhnev is going to be leader from the mid-60s until 1980 in the Soviet Union instead. Okay. So our next topic will be flexible response. So the next blurb will be flexible response. Whenever Kennedy became president, he criticized Eisenhower's use of brinkmanship. He said that there should be other alternatives besides just all-out nuclear war. And so when Kennedy comes in, whenever he campaigns and when he becomes president, he proposes this idea of trying to address issues through flexible response. Because you have things like little brush wars in Africa and Asia, and it doesn't necessarily require us to go out and nuclear bomb them. So there should be different levels of responses, not just like nothing to nuclear weapons. Because just like us, the Soviets are also out in Asia and out in Africa trying to influence other countries to follow what we want, to try to be influenced by us. And so if there's conflicts there, like later with Vietnam, we want to make sure that we have a response that's not nuclear weapons. So Congo, Laos, Vietnam, all these areas apply. So this is what flexible response does. And it's a rejection of Dulles' massive retaliation. So JFK and his defense secretary, Robert McNamara, who, again, don't have to be really familiar with, decide to increase spending back on conventional forces. So if you recall, Eisenhower reduced spending on conventional forces like the Army and Navy and only really focused on new weapons, jets, planes, those kind of things. So Kennedy keeps us doing the arms race with nuclear weapons, but also increases the amount of conventional soldiers, conventional Navy personnel we have. And so we're kind of doing both with JFK. JFK also is the president who creates special forces, so like Navy SEALs, the Green Berets in the Army. All these different special forces are made under JFK. So now you have things like special forces can go into a situation, a regular Army unit can go into a situation, then maybe down the road we go to nuclear warheads, but basically not going from 0 to 60. And he promised that like in 1661, and so whenever he does this brinkmanship style of reaction to the Cuban Missile Crisis, that's when he gets a lot of criticism for not doing what he said with flexible response. So that's what you need to be aware of for flexible response. The last thing is to be assassination. And let me just tell you this right now, whether I was there or not, I don't buy into a lot of the assassination, conspiracies or scandals or whatever you want to talk about. I think it was just a lone man talking to a former teacher of ours, Dr. Hill, who was a Marine, because Lee Harvey Oswald, who killed JFK, was a Marine. He feels very confident he could have popped off those 3 shots so quickly that it killed JFK. Usually I do show the video for this in class, but we have to cover that at some point when I get back. But just for the assassination, JFK goes to Dallas, Texas in November of 63. So November 63, he's in Dallas, Texas. He's there for a few reasons. Number one, he's there for the next year's the election season, so he's trying to help win support of Texas with LBJ and so forth being there too. He's also talking to Texas about trying to spearhead the Civil Rights Bill, which we're going to get to that later on. He wants Texas to help spear the Civil Rights Bill that's going to come out later on in 1964 with Johnson. But he's there promoting that as well, too. So he decides to go with the governor and do this open limousine tour through Dallas. So they're driving through Dallas in an open limousine. The governor's sitting in front of him, and then his wife and he are sitting in the back seat. Then 3 shots ring out. Lee Harvey Oswald is the assumed assassin. The Kennedy takes one to the throat, and then he takes one to the head, which pretty much kills him, not instantly, but within the next half hour. They find Lee Harvey Oswald a few days later. They arrest him, bring him to jail, but he doesn't talk while he's being interrogated with the police and so forth. 2 days later, they decide to move him from his jailhouse to another jailhouse. So as they're moving him out of the police department, this local gangster walks up and shoots Lee Harvey Oswald in the chest, which basically creates all the conspiracy theories. Because why is this random gangster, and the guy's name was Jack Ruby, why does this random gangster come up and shoot the assassin of the president? And so we never find out if Lee Harvey Oswald confesses to it or was guilty or not, because he gets killed by this other random guy in Dallas, Texas beforehand. So, and again, that's as far as I get into it. I believe it was Lee Harvey Oswald with his rifle up at the book depository. I don't buy these other, second shooters ideas and so forth. That's just me, though. You don't have to believe it, but that's what I believe, and that's what history pretty much tells us and so forth. So as a result of this, LBJ creates what's called the Warren Commission. He gets the Chief Justice, Earl Warren, to head the Special Investigative Commission to figure out what happened to JFK. They do research. They do investigations for the next several months. After they do the investigation, the Warren Commission concludes that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. But because there's so much mystery around this, and there's all these things with the Cold War and Cuba and the Soviet Union, and does LBJ want to become president? All these different things lend themselves to conspiracy, and people didn't trust the results of the commission. They didn't trust the assassination itself, and so now we've dealt with 4 or 5 decades with conspiracy theories. And so the assassination investigation left many people in doubt of the credibility of national government. So the significance of this event is that it's one of the first major events in the 60s that leads people to not trust the government. We're going to see more of that with Vietnam and a few other things, but the assassination in 1963 is the first event which makes people feel like they can't fully trust their government going forward. And then JFK's legacy. I mean, JFK, in my opinion, is a lot bigger deal now because of the assassination. Like we said, he doesn't really accomplish a whole lot as president at home. He has to deal with a lot of things as far as the Cold War goes, and you had all the press and people who were obsessed with the Camelot stuff. But other than that, JFK himself was not a fantastic president. It's just that a lot of people really like him because he has a lot of attention because of the assassination and so forth. So we're going to stop the first video there and then go into Johnson next.